What's up, my friends? How's it going today? Howdy. Carpo here, and I just got back from a little trip to well, not quite to the beach. I was actually up at a place called Hood Canal, and it was a beautiful spot. It was just a little bit, just a few miles away from the place that we've stayed a couple times on Lake Cushman, which is just on the edge of the Olympic National Forest. And back in the day when I was, a teenager and into my 20s and even up till my early 30s, I always had this thing about getting away, as far as possible from civilization. We would, go bombing down these burly dirt roads until we got to the middle of nowhere, and then we'd camp. And as years passed, you start to realize that having water is essential. While camping out in the middle of nowhere is great, camping by water is great too. And the problem with that is that water's limited in the amount of space that you have to camp. Point being that you end up having to camp near other people, and we end up giving in over time. And not only that, but switching from tents to renting cabins. I'll tell you what happened was the first time we rented a forest lookout cabin, and there's a lot of those around here from the Forestry Service, and they rent them out through there's a website you can go to where you can rent the forestry cabins, and they can be like $40 to $50 a night, which is pretty cheap for a cabin. The thing about these lookout cabins is they're in the middle of nowhere, and some of them are only rented like in the winter where you have to actually snowshoe in, and they're just awesome, But the first time we stayed at one of those, it was at a place called a PV cabin, and it was up by the Wallowa Mountains in eastern Oregon. Just gorgeous. And nobody's going to come down that road. I mean, it's a road that leads just to the cabin. Just a beautiful place. So after that, we realized how awesome it is to have access to something as simple as a refrigerator and a sink. Even if you don't have running water, just having a sink to work with and things like that are super bonus. And toilets are nice too. But then we started renting houses. So we rented a house when we go on beach trips and stuff. We try to get a house. But the one we stayed at was really nice because it was right on the water. And I'm sitting in there thinking, you look off the back deck and you've got the whole Hood Canal, and it's just gorgeous. You can get up in the middle of the night and go out and see all the stars. And I think about that, like the idea of wanting to have that permanently. And I don't have a desire to move into a place like that. I do want to move up into a place with property, a house that's maybe a farm. I don't need a big house. I mean, I'd be happy with 2,500 square feet, and that may be a lot to some people, but it's not when you have a family of 4. So the place we have now is about 1,000 square feet, and it does okay, but I don't have enough room for office and shop and all that extra stuff. And anyway, life gets cluttered. So when we stayed in the house, we drove up to Lake Cushman to go mushroom picking. I was mushroom picking. Basically, it was just a family excursion hike, and while I'm there, I became overwhelmed by the amount of mushrooms that are up there in the Olympics. I mean, there's a lot. There's so many different kinds, and they're just everywhere. But really, it was about, for those who were wondering, it wasn't just about psychedelic mushrooms. It was about edible mushrooms. But more than that, it was just about identifying mushrooms and learning about them. Because when you go out in the field is when you really get to, and it's funny because of all the things that a little just thing that popped into my head when we were traveling, and I've bombed down so many dirt roads and gravel roads in my time. I've come so close to so many accidents, going off edges, hitting rocks, running over things and stuff like that, and just make it through fine. I've only had like one flat tire, and that was on the freeway. I mean, I've never had to change a tire in the middle of nowhere or run out of gas. And there was one time when we were camping when I was about 25 where my battery died in my car because we had the stereo going. And we were miles and miles from the roads. So I actually had to hike straight through the woods. I kind of blocked this out, but I traveled through the woods all the way down to the river, and it was a couple miles down there, and I had to wade across this river. Hold on, I gotta get something. Okay. The joys of parenting. Ouch. Ooh, there it goes again. My sciatica. Oh God. I'm glad I remembered, but it's too bad it happened. Oh God. talk about that in a minute. So anyhow, I've driven down so many roads and never really had any major problems except for that dead battery once. But we passed by this trailhead, okay, and the whole family's in the car. Two of the kids, the two youngest, and my wife and I was like, oh, I think I saw a trail back there. So I just backed up down the road and kind of backed and turned into the parking, the place to park in front of it. Or so I thought, until I backed up a little too far and ended up cantilevering over, and our car was sitting almost sideways. Put it this way, if I'd gotten out of the car, it would have rolled over into the ditch upside down. So we're sitting here trying to figure out what to do. My wife's like, okay, what do we do? And the kids are in the back seat. So I have my youngest climb over me, and I let him out the driver's side, which was by the road. And then I let my other son, he climbs carefully over me, and I set them both out. And at this point, I know that if either one of us get out, it could be a problem. If my wife starts to climb around, it might flip the car. If I get out, the car's going to flip. So I'm like, all right, let's just hope for the best. And I just hit the gas and and the car just goes, it was just about to tip over and just boom, landed back, and we managed and pulled it out of that ditch. I don't know how I did it. It was almost like I was being pushed. It was just, I could see how people can think that when they're in a tough situation, that they're helped, because in this case, I just happened to have the right grip on the tires and the spots where they were at. I don't know how, because looking back at the ditch, I mean, it's crazy where I was stuck, and it was a muddy ditch too. But anyway, pulled out of it and got out. And it was one of those cases where, it's easy to overlook those moments where you do pull out of a situation. Where instead of that, I could have easily gotten out in a panic. And the car rolled over, destroyed it. Maybe the family could have got hurt. Anything could have happened. But one stupid little mistake like that, in reverse, in a generally safe area, that's what happens. Oh, so, I got out of the car. We'd been driving home. Spent 3 days there. I was driving home, and we're about an hour and a half into the trip, about 45 minutes from home, maybe an hour, and we decided to stop for gas, and there's a little restaurant there. So I got out at the restaurant, and I walked about 30 feet towards the door, and then my leg just, it was like an electric bolt, just shot through my leg. I was like, oh! And for a minute, I was incapacitated. I wanted to drop to the ground. I was able to walk into the restaurant, and at that point, I really just wanted to leave, but I was like, we need to eat. So I sat down, and it was like my shin was being shocked by a million volts. I don't know, anybody who's had sciatica, and the reason I'm mentioning this is because people have asked me, how is your sciatica, because I used to have it really bad a few years ago. And for about 4 years I suffered sciatica, and for 1 year of it, it was incapacitating to where when I sat on the couch, I was sitting with my, instead of sitting on the couch, when I watched TV, I would be hunched over backwards, so I was arched with my lumbar on the edge of the couch. So basically, it was a really bad position, but it was the only comfortable position. And eventually I just had to quit carpentry. I was like, I can't do construction anymore. I cannot lift stuff. And a year passed, and then I started the kratom business, figuring, well, it's not hard on my back. At least I can do herbs and whatnot. And then I just let it go, because when the pain's gone, you don't think about it as much. But it's in the back of my mind, remembering being helped into the bathtub, remembering not being able to move, and not being able to sleep for more than 3 hours at a time for a year or two. And kratom was the only thing that helped me through that time. It was just a godsend. And as soon as this happened to me again, I started thinking, oh no, please don't. I just sat there in the chair and thought, please, if there's anything I can ask for, it's to get up and walk out of here and drive home and be fine and not have this happen again. Because it might have been the way I was sitting in the car, and I was thinking maybe it was a fluke and it was gone until I just said that, and it reminded me a minute ago, because I sat and I felt this, pain can really suck. I'll tell you, if you've had chronic pain, it's very different from acute pain. And folks who don't have pain don't understand the intensity of the pain, the scale of pain. I think I was up in the 8 range, in the 10 scale range. And 10 is, a lot of people say, oh, it's a 10. No, 10 is where you're so debilitated you can't talk or move, and you are just shaking and trembling. You are in bed just so in pain that you cannot even hold a conversation at all. And basically dying. But 9 is quite up there. It's, on the pain scale. But sitting at even 6 or 7 is really intense, and it can be debilitating, and you forget about daily life and how hard it is to actually to function when you're in pain. You're able to cover it up, you're able to hide it from yourself by ignoring it, because that's what chronic pain does. It becomes a dull throb, and basically it diminishes your lifestyle and detracts from your ability to enjoy life. And sometimes it's to the point where, you just don't, you wonder what if life is even worth living, because when you're excruciating pain, it's like, I never got to the point where I would want to end it, but I definitely got to the point where I could understand how people would if they didn't have anything to live for, and they were sitting there in pain, and they had no family and friends, and they were just lost, and they just end it, because of the pain. It's horrible that people have to live through bad pain, For me, my neighbor actually, he has the same problem with his lower back, and he just got surgery for it. But he's like in his 50s. I think he's like, mid 50s, and he's a really nice guy, and he's just, I tried to get him to try kratom for so long, but he didn't like the taste. But he was taking the pharmaceuticals, and I'm like, well, all I can say is, if it helps you, it helps you. If you can't take it, you can't take it, to each his own. But he came over the other day, and he was just hating it, and he had it fused, and that's the one thing I never wanted to do, was have my vertebrae fused. I never wanted to go in. I went to a chiropractor, which I never should have. The more I learn about chiropractors, the less I really have faith in what they're doing. I'm not going to deny that an adjustment can help people feel better temporarily. I mean, why not? But overall, it made my sciatica worse. And I decided that I was just going to tough it out, and I did, and it sucked. There was nothing else you could do. And that's my point. You have certain pain, you can hold it, you can push it, you can, different things. There's only 2 real pains I've had, I guess 3, where you cannot console them, and that's headaches, toothaches, and backaches. Bad sciatic pain. There's just no comfortable position. And what's happening is the sciatic nerve comes out between the vertebrae, and when your vertebrae wear down, they will compress that nerve. So when you lean a certain direction, it can be like a shock. And generally it goes down through your hip. For me, down through my hip, and then around the front of my leg, down the shin, and then all the way down to the big toe. And sometimes I'll just feel a dull ache in my big toe. I'll know that's what it is. Sometimes I'll have a weird pain in my side or my hip and wonder if there's something wrong with it. For a while I was kind of panicking, because I thought maybe a few years back that I was like, is there something wrong with my stomach or something, or is my hip going bad? But it was that deferred pain from the sciatic nerve, because it can appear anywhere in the leg. You could just have it in the shin, just have it in the side, just have it in the hip. And that's what makes pain so hard to deal with, man. But ultimately, whatever, we get over it. What do you do? Life throws a lot of interesting curveballs at us. I'm just hoping for the best. Just hoping it doesn't get worse. I don't have any more problems, Taking little trips like that out of town and really seeing the world, for a couple days out of your normal realm, that nostalgia, that novelty, however you, if it's nostalgia if you've been there before, and it's novelty if it's new, but either way, they're both phenomenal things for the human mind. I sleep differently and eat differently, and we even poop differently when we're out traveling. Everybody knows that when you're on the road or doing, all your habits change. Your eating habits, your bathroom habits, and your sleeping habits, because there's an excitement in the air about being in a new place, and I think that that's important for us to get to. It's funny, because when my sciatica was really bad, I couldn't actually travel at all. At one point, I got in the car and I drove 5 blocks, and I was so mad. I was like, I didn't know what to do. I had to drive back home. I could not drive for a period of time, a long period, and kind of blocked it out, so I don't remember how much time exactly. But it was miserable for me to drive to work. I would leave like an hour earlier than normal so I could beat traffic. Because if I had to sit in traffic, it would take an extra 10 minutes, and that extra 10 minutes would screw up my back for the day. And I can't believe it. This is only like 3 years ago that I was doing this, where I was going in and abusing my back by lifting 100-pound boards and turning and twisting and putting up beams and all this stuff. And it was like, dude, I know you've got to make a living, but you've got to stay alive. You know, how many of us have been faced with issues where we have to make a living, but we also may be compromising our health, or sometimes compromising our integrity by working a shitty job that we know is not something that's helping the environment. Let's say, you know, if we're conflicts of interest. You know, we're environmentally friendly, but then we work for a company that throws away a lot of stuff they could recycle, and you try to make a difference, and nobody gives a shit, and you know, bad business practices. And anyway, it's a crazy world to live in, and there's a lot of things we learn about this world. I don't know, and hopefully there's a lot of things we learn about this world. Hopefully we take some of it, you know, to heart, and are able to really embrace it, you know, really use it in our lives, use everything that we learn for the better of ourselves and those around us. But anyway, rant over. I'm going to start another video so I can get to a specific topic. So I'll talk to you later.